If this particular question came in your UPSC mains, that is APAAR ID a digital leap or a privacy trap, each and every one of you would write these points or some variants of these points. UPSC is specifically focused on a few fundamental rights. Article 21, then you have one common aspect which is Article 19. Before delving into the original text of APAAR ID, as an aspirant and me as a mentor of yours, it's very important for me to tell you which are the subjects where the APAAR ID intersects. कि अगर कोई बच्चा पढ़ रहा है, then they have made it a compulsion कि they have to enroll under the APAAR ID. Imagine I tell you, you have to give your mains examination after 10 days. The first subject which you will pick up is polity, और उसमें से fundamental rights, preamble and directive principles would be your first go-to topics, and rightly so. UPSC has time and again tested the aspirants from these particular topics. और आपका वो preparation schedule में what are the topics you will take initially, या कौन सा बुक्स अगर मैं पूछूं कौन से बुक्स आप पहले पढ़ोगे इन टॉपिक से, फर्स्ट वुड बी लक्ष्मीकांत, एंड देन यू विल पिक अप एनी करंट अफेयर्स मैगजीन and try to list down what are some of the issues related to fundamental rights, and you feel sorted after this much of preparation. Hold for a minute and let us look at the various questions which UPSC has asked from fundamental rights. Now, if you see this particular year on year, you will find UPSC, unlike the common general perception ki we need to study it in whole, UPSC is specifically focused on a few fundamental rights. If I tell you, first is Article 21, then you have one common aspect which is Article 19. Other than this, what UPSC has essentially done is, it has asked you how fundamental rights has evolved over the years, which was asked in 2023. But again in this case, it asks you to illustrate with respect to right to life and personal liberty, which is again Article 21. अभी ये एक side of the preparation है. Look at the other side. If you read the complete question, discuss Section 66A of IT Act with reference to its alleged violation of Article 19. This was asked in 2013. The reason being, Supreme Court had passed a very important judgment with respect to Section 66A of IT Act. Come to 2024. ये तो 2013 की बात हो गई. Recent question, if we look at, it talks about right to privacy is intrinsic to right to life and personal liberty, but there's a second aspect to this question. In this reference, discuss the law relating to DNA testing of a child in a womb. So one pattern which you might all see, it is some fundamental rights, primarily Article 21 or 19, with the intersection of a particular current affairs. Now, if I say current affairs, it's again very vast. Let's break it down further. 66A IT Act के बारे में पूछा, उस बार जुडिशरी ने जजमेंट पास किया था. यहाँ पे लॉ रिलेटिंग टू डीएनए टेस्टिंग के बारे में पूछा, इट्स अ लॉ पास बाय द लेजिस्लेटर. Now, again, if you see, you'll find a particular question where it was asked about lighting crackers on Diwali and the ban which was imposed, which is again an executive decision. So if I break down the current affairs again, it's basically any decision of an organ of a state and how it impacts the individual rights. So now we have narrowed down our preparation to this basic minimum. कि Article 21 या 19 या any other fundamental rights, if it intersects at any public policy which has been in news Any public policy which has been in news that year, that is going to be a very important topic for our mains preparation. And one such topic which was constantly in news this year is the introduction of APAAR ID. Now, if you look, one such news last year was the introduction of APAAR ID. Now, what is APAAR ID? What is its significance? Why government introduced? We are going to delve into all these aspects and much more. If you look at some of the major headlines this year, which has focused on APAAR ID, you will see a particular theme running under it. If you see the first headline, APAAR ID for school students is voluntary, but parents, activists worry about the growing mandate from the state. If you look at the second news, which was in Indian Express, APAAR ID is a backdoor push to make Aadhaar mandatory in education. So again, here we understand that there's some debate going in and around education system. When you look at the third news, it claims to usher in a new era of digital student identity in India. This essentially is the talk on the positive aspects. So these are the various fragments of news which has come with regard to APAAR ID. Now, let us plot what we can study, what you will study, and how should we go forth. If I tell you, APAAR ID, the first thing which you will find in all current affairs magazines is, what is APAAR ID? Since it's a very new concept in the Indian education system, you will find this in each and every aspect. When you have significance, and then you would be having issues. And issues which are essentially very generic. क्योंकि इस पर्टिकुलर टॉपिक के ऊपर इतना डिबेट या एडिटोरियल्स पास्ट 1 ईयर में आया नहीं है. दो इतने एडिटोरियल्स आए नहीं है, बट व्हाई दिस इशू बिकम्स वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. फर्स्ट, द गवर्नमेंट हैज सेड that it is very important for the implementation of national education policy. That is where our burning issue is going to go in a bit deeper. Is how does it essentially intersects with National Education Policy 2020, and why the implementation of NEP 2020 will rest on this particular ID. Then the second aspect, basically जिसके ऊपर यूपीएससी ने साल दर साल क्वेश्चन पूछा है, be it in GS paper 2 or in GS paper 4, is that APAAR ID raises the question of centralization versus individual rights. Now this is a very important theme जो इस particular topic से बाहर निकल के आता है. अभी जैसे आप लोग पढ़ रहे होंगे, ये issues के अंदर probably you will be writing one issue as centralization versus individual rights. But just now we saw what was 2024 question. Right to privacy is an inherent part of right to life and personal liberty. How does the DNA testing bill perform with respect to that right to privacy and right to life? So you need that level of analysis, that level of depth in your analysis. Just writing one point in the issue part won't suffice. So we will be delving deeply into this aspect, and we will see the various points and examples which we can write in the examination with respect to this topic. Before delving into the original text of APAAR ID, as an aspirant and me as a mentor of yours, it's very important for me to tell you which are the subjects where the APAAR ID intersects. If you see here, in GS2, APAAR ID forms obviously a very important part of right to privacy. Then it also has an important role in social justice portion, where education comes into picture, and our analysis with respect to the education sector will give you sufficient points here. Other than GS2, if you have to think of adjacent GS papers, this does not come in GS1 and GS3, but it forms a very important part of GS4, where we can talk about probity in governance and how APAAR ID intersects with this part of the syllabus. By the end of this lecture, you would get to know that. Now, before delving into the various issues, let us first understand what APAAR ID is. Now, APAAR ID is a 12-digit unique student ID. Now, when I say 12-digit unique student ID, that means it will help you in maintaining your academic records from your preschool level till your PhD. So it is basically a student database management system. Now, what is the first benefit जो on the surface अपने को दिख रहा है? The first and the most important benefit is data management, or you can tell that it would help a student in keeping all his academic records at one place and to access that when and wherever required. What is the second most important? अभी जैसे एक लॉकर में आपके सारे एकेडमिक रिकॉर्ड्स के डेटा हैं, that means you will also have the credits which you have earned at different stages of your life in that particular record management system. So suppose if I as a student now drop out for various reasons and then again want to return to my education after 5 years, I don't need to run after institutions or people for my transcripts, for my degree, etc. So what it essentially does is it helps in carrying over credits. Now, if you're able to carry over credits, that means you have a good amount of recognition of prior learning. So you have a recognition of prior learning. कि अगर 5 साल बाद भी आते हो, you can carry over your past credits. This is what it seems on the surface. अभी क्वेश्चन अगर यूपीएससी में आता है डायरेक्टली अपार आईडी रिगार्डिंग, most of the students will write it is a 12-digit unique student ID for each and every student in the country. Now that is where you lose half one a mark, because when you are writing this, mention that shortly कि it is necessary for academic record management. It will help in recognition of prior learning because the credits would be carried over. So essentially first, और definition mostly आप लोग introduction में लिखोगे. So when you're writing definition, don't just mention in 4-5 words कि ये है. तिरंगा क्या है? National flag है. No, you are giving UPSC mains examination. You have to write the colors of the national flag and what do they mean. So you understand this analogy. While writing definition, don't just write superficial generic definition. Rather than go a bit deeper into it. So, abhi On the surface, it seems pretty good, well and hunky-dory, because you have, and it will be beneficial to a number of students. It will reduce the governance hassles. But what are the issues here? Now, issues, देखो आपको बहुत जगह पे ये what are the issues अगर कोई पूछे, points बहुत मिल जाएंगे. मैं यहाँ पे आपको points देने नहीं आया हूँ. You have to understand the topic and then you can generate points out of that. And for understanding the topic, it's very important that you understand how this system functions. और उसके लिए हम लेंगे 2 case studies. Now, APAAR ID has been introduced in 2 particular states. अभी हम अगर ये as a case study पढ़ लेंगे वहां पे issues क्या हुआ है, then it would become very easy for us not just to write points, but take the examples of Uttar Pradesh and Karnataka, the 2 states where this has been implemented, and substantiate our issue. तो हम देखते हैं कि first So the first issue which has essentially emerged from this is steep targets. So education authorities have essentially given the schools very high targets, so much so that in these 2 particular states, they have been targets with respect to 100% enrollment. कि अगर कोई बच्चा पढ़ रहा है, then they have made it a compulsion that they have to enroll under the APAAR ID. Now, in this case, one major issue which comes up is this is now no longer a choice. It has become a compulsion for the students to register themselves on the portal of APAAR ID. And in this respect, in the race of achieving targets, many of the data might be fudged because the goal here has become not to get the correct data, but to get the maximum data. Right? So, steep targets, ये किसके लिए है? This is for schools. Now, you understand how it works. अभी schools के लिए अगर steep targets दिया गया है उत्तर प्रदेश और कर्नाटक में, whom will they tell? They will tell the parents of the students studying in their school. You have to do this. And this has emerged as a threat for a number of parents, where the school authorities are forcing them to register on the APAAR ID. And this actually has come up as complaints from many parents. So again, this is the second issue which has come up. Where parents have been threatened with no APAAR enrollment means no benefits which they get from government schools. And the third, where the critics have actually raised concerns, is it will become very easy for anybody to show their bias and discrimination, because this might lead to student profiling of minority sections. So there are 3 basic problems which have emerged on the surface from these 2 states where they have been implemented. Now, if you look at these 3 problems, you will find the basic theme underlying the actual implementation is the debate which surrounds, is it a digital leap or a threat to privacy. Now, this is the basic issue which lies at the surface of this particular APAAR ID. So, this becomes a very important probable question which UPSC can ask you, right? और अगर इसके ऊपर क्वेश्चन पूछ रहा है, if UPSC is specifically asking you to write down this particular answer, I am telling you कि 70 से 80% लोग कैसे लिखेंगे? APAAR ID threatens right to privacy. It doesn't make anybody accountable. Transparency is gone. Either they will write this या फिर थोड़ा enlarged version इस sentence का लिखेंगे. Now that is where you lose out marks. ये बहुत common conception है कि हमने तो सब पढ़ा था, सब लिखा था, फिर भी मार्क कहां पे छूटा. अभी देखेंगे मार्क एक्चुअली कहां पे छूटता है. If this particular question came in your UPSC mains, that is APAAR ID a digital leap or a privacy trap, each and every one of you would write these points or some variants of these points. Accountability, lawful data processing, adaptability, consent and control, and ethicality of the act. These are the 5 points जो इस issue से generate होके आते हैं. But difference फिर क्यों आता है marks में? Difference इसलिए आता है कि most of the students write the issue, but you need to show that why that issue is a concern. Suppose somebody asks you कि आपने पढ़ा marks क्यों कमाए? आपने पढ़ा नहीं था, but आपने पढ़ा क्यों नहीं था? That should be your answer. And that is how you are going to write in UPSC mains exam. You write the issue, then tell why it's a concern. And further you provide them with specific examples. Not just ऊपर से कि accountability नहीं है. This is where the difference will come between getting 3 on 15 and 8 on 15. So now accountability, how will we write this? That is what our main aim in this particular section is. So APAAR ID is an executive decision. There is no law which has been passed to implement this. So that obviously makes it that there is no legal oversight. Since it has not come out of a law, there is no legislative backing. Parliament has not made it. It's an executive decision. And since there is no legal oversight, it will become very difficult if some profiling or mass surveillance occurs, because there is no layer of grievance redressal. Right? In this example, what you can give is, don't just stick to India. Now that is what actually the beauty of burning issues is. It will not just make you stick to the wahi rate examples. The amount of research that goes into it, you will find it in the examples. Example here will be taking of Germany. Now, Germany has a student ID system, but it is regulated by GDPR regulations, General Data Protection Regulations. So you have a legislative backing to it. Legislative backing as in you have trust behind it, which does not exist in case of APAAR ID. Second point, lawful data processing. Now imagine a country like India with a huge number of students and you have all its data at a particular server, but you don't have a data protection law. So essentially it makes the entire spectrum of data very vulnerable to outside threats. For example, you can talk about some cyber threat. For example, the one in Mumbai power systems which happened. Similarly, it can be done for here as well. With lack of data protection law, you are basically making your data vulnerable to cyber threats. Then you come to adaptability. Now, adaptability essentially has a lot of national security concerns as well. APAAR ID would be connected to other data systems which exist in the spectrum of Indian education as well. One such platform is UDISE Plus, which is Unified District Information System for Education Plus. Now, this keeps data, education related data, at the district level. Now, when you are essentially linking the APAAR ID with other databases, there's a huge scope of profiling of students, because you will essentially get each and every information about a particular student. And this has already happened in China, where AI backed student profiling has happened. Now, that is again going to serve as an example and substantiation for these points. Fourth point is about consent and control. Just as we saw in our previous case studies from the Uttar Pradesh and Karnataka government, there a lot of parents have been forced to enroll, and that is where the topic of consent comes, because consent is at the base of all the individual fundamental rights in the modern era. And that is where the mode of implementation of APAAR ID violates this consent aspect. यहाँ पे अभी example देना है, तो you will give the example of Karnataka or Uttar Pradesh, the case studies which would be mentioned. Then fifth is ethicality. How will an ethical issue come here? Is suppose a student data is misrepresented in the APAAR ID. It might lead to exclusion errors from any government subsidy or benefits which he or she might have got. Now, this is a very important point. Exclusion errors, because several such cases have come from the DigiLocker initiative. So, DigiLocker initiative will again serve as an example here, where the actual rightful recipient of benefits might lose access to them. And why would he or she lose access? Because of exclusion errors which might happen during the enrollment in the APAAR ID. So, if you see this particular block, which is again directly taken from the Burning Issues magazine, you would realize that these are not just points, these are proper answers. You have issue, then you write why it is a concern, and then you substantiate. This will make your answer specific, and it will make the examiner understand that you have gone into the depth of the issue and have not remembered points superficially. Now we'll go to the second aspect of exploring this particular topic from various facets where UPSC might ask questions. Now, from the two case studies, we came up with one particular issue which was very glaring. Is it a digital leap or a privacy trap? Then we move into what has the government actually said. Why has government implemented? The government's first logic was it will help in the implementation of NEP 2020. Now we are going to explore how will it actually help in the implementation of NEP 2020. The first point is flexible academic structure. Why? Because now you have all the data in one particular system. So suppose as a person you are not able to continue education for some reason, you might again return back. So you will restart because your data would be stored in the system. First is flexible academic structure. How does it aids to maintain a flexible academic structure? NEP 2020 talked about something called as academic bank of credits, where no matter whichever subject you do, you will be getting credit for that completion of that particular course. Suppose you are a Pol Science student doing MA or a Master in Arts, but you wish to do something in accounting, so you will be getting credit for that as well. So this is what academic bank of credits is. And APAAR ID essentially facilitates that, because you either take an accounting course or political science ka course, the credits will be stored at one particular ID. Second, you have integration of vocational and technical education. Now, you have academic bank of credits, जहां से आपने कोई भी कोर्स किया वहां पे क्रेडिट आपका फिल होते गया. अभी उसमें आप vocational education करो, which will help you to gain jobs, or you learn a new skill like a Java or a computer language or any other skill, and along with that you take some technical education. That will also, APAAR ID will help you in integrating both the aspects. Then coming to the third, it makes the education personalized. Something what NEP 2020 had focused upon. What is personalized education? As an individual, you have your individual learning pathways. And this is a way by which that individual learning pathways can be recognized. Now, how can it be recognized? Because suppose I am an institution and I have the access to APAAR ID records. So I would understand the courses in which you actually succeeded and the courses in which you failed. So in that case, APAAR ID will give a proper pathway to the institutions to design courses on an individual basis. Now, when the question comes in UPSC, how APAAR ID activates NEP or some other variant of that, when you're writing it makes the education personalized, show how it makes the education personalized. Because APAAR ID essentially will be the data management tool for the learning pathways of each individual. An institution can access that database and then design courses depending upon an individual. This is how it makes it personalized. Now, how does this, the fourth point is, it makes the education system inclusive and equitable. Now, this is again something which NEP 2020 or the National Education Policy had talked about. It makes inclusive and equitable because once you have the data of students, their degrees, how the time when they dropped out from the education system, it would help the government to make better public policies related to education. So, now again coming back to the point, when you are reading a topic, two things are important. You go you go into the depth of the topic rather than just reading challenges, initiatives, way forward. Be a thinking mind and understand the various facets of a particular topic. Just like, is it a privacy trap? How will it help NEP? And once you do that, don't bother about chasing 200 sources for getting those points. Your points should be these 20-30 words, and you should understand the entire topic. And coming to the most important segment of this, coming to the most important segment of analysis of this particular topic is the third, which is, does it promote centralization and it acts against individual rights? Now, of all the levels of analysis which we have done of APAAR ID, This is by far the most important level of analysis. The reason being, अपार आईडी के बारे में भले ही डायरेक्ट क्वेश्चन ना पूछे, बट हमको ऐसे तैयार होना है कि इफ वी आर रीडिंग अ पर्टिकुलर टॉपिक, वी शुड बी रेडी टू हैंडल अदर क्वेश्चंस एज वेल, बट टेक कंटेंट फ्रॉम व्हाट वी हैव स्टडीड. जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल, अगर मैं क्रॉप सिस्टम के बारे में पढ़ता हूं और अगर इंडियन एग्रीकल्चर पे कोई क्वेश्चन आता है, तो हम ये क्रॉप सिस्टम का एग्जांपल लेके वहां पे साइट कर सकते हैं. And that is what enriches our answers. तो बर्निंग इश्यूज का फिलोसॉफी भी एसेंशियली वही है कि टॉपिक हमने पढ़ा अपार आईडी, वो क्या है, बेसिक दो कंट्रोवर्सीज क्या है, गवर्नमेंट क्या बोल रही है, क्रिटिक्स क्या बोल रहे हैं, तो उसका जो ब्रॉडर थीम क्या है, जैसे क्रॉप सिस्टम का एग्रीकल्चर था, उसी तरह से अपार आईडी का ब्रॉडर थीम है हाउ इट ब्रिंग्स to forth or brings to light the debate between centralization versus individual rights. Now we'll move into the third level of analysis, and which is by far the most important analysis of this topic. Before moving into that, I'll give you an example. You study about trends of rice cultivation. Just say trends of rice exports. Right? Let us say you study trends of rice export, but the question in UPSC या फिर कोई भी टेस्ट सीरीज दे रहे हो comes on Indian agriculture. So you will but obvious cite this particular trends in question related to Indian agriculture. The reason being, you have studied this. This is trends. This includes data, examples, and this is very high impact. You know that. You can use it in Indian agriculture because ये obviously broader theme है. So it's very important to recognize what is the broader theme of every current affairs news. उसी रिस्पेक्ट में मैं अगर अपार आईडी की बात करूं, तो हमने एक थीम देखा, प्राइवेसी डिबेट. और प्राइवेसी डिबेट का मूल या फाउंडेशन क्या था? इज इट लीडिंग टू अ लॉट ऑफ सेंट्रलाइजेशन वेयर देयर इज अ स्कोप ऑफ टू मच गवर्नमेंट कंट्रोल ऑन इंडिविजुअल डेटा? दैट मीन्स सेंट्रलाइजेशन वर्सेस इंडिविजुअल राइट्स. नाउ ऐसा भी हो सकता है कि अपार आईडी पे क्वेश्चन ना हो, क्वेश्चन सेंट्रलाइजेशन वर्सेस इंडिविजुअल राइट्स पे हो, बट वो क्वेश्चन आएगा क्योंकि अपार आईडी न्यूज में था. तो उस केस में इट्स वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट फॉर अस टू नो कि अदर देन अपार आईडी और ऐसे कौन से न्यूज आइटम्स हैं या फिर पर्टिकुलर करंट अफेयर्स हैं जो न्यूज में रहे हैं और वो इसी थीम से अलाइन करते हैं. सो विदाउट टेकिंग मच मोर टाइम, so let us explore that. So let us explore that aspect. So if I have to see some controversies which have taken place in the past few years, first controversy which comes to my mind is first controversy which will come here is Aadhaar. Now, unique identification number, which was meant for all the residents of the country. Now, in that case also, a lot of controversy arose on these particular theme. How? First, privacy concerns. Then you had potential breach या फिर compromise of data integrity. Breach of data integrity या फिर compromising the data would hamper the entire nation. Then what was the third controversy here? There was a scope of exclusion of marginalized communities, those who would not be able to get their names on the Aadhaar system. This is where Supreme Court made its judgment that it cannot be made compulsory for giving out benefits, doles or subsidies. So this in outcome, you have the Supreme Court judgment. So now if you see the issue with respect to APAAR ID, I feel you can answer any question. क्योंकि आप खाली APAAR ID के बारे में नहीं पढ़ रहे हो, आप सिमिलर इश्यूज जो इंडिया में हुए हैं, you're talking about that, its reasons and outcomes. Now Aadhaar was a very common example. Think of few other examples. One thing which comes to my mind is we talked about is DigiLocker. Again, why was the DigiLocker? What was the objective behind DigiLocker initiative? It was basically digital storage of official documents. Digital storage of official documents. But again here, similar data security concerns arose. We talked about exclusion errors. Because due to lack of adequate documents in the DigiLocker, some of them lost benefits because they could not show their original documents. Now, again here one more aspect which came with respect to DigiLocker was, though it was a very good initiative, I feel personally, but there was a real lack of awareness with respect to this. DigiLocker is one which has been widely accepted by it has been widely adopted, but what the outcome was after these problems, a lot of security enhancements were made. Then if you remember during the COVID time, similar debate of centralization versus individual rights came with respect to Arogya Setu app. Now what was the Arogya Setu app doing? It was for contact tracing during COVID-19. Now if you look at the issues during that time, a lot of issue came with respect to concerns regarding surveillance. So again here surveillance concerns emerged. Government later made it open source to address these concerns. So if you see these particular points, now these are very specific points. They don't beat around the bush. Rather, they give you a specific point, and these all controversies are fit into one table, where essentially you can talk about centralization versus individual rights. अभी इस पे कुछ भी question पूछ ले UPSC. If first it asks about the concerns with regard to this, in the table you have the reasons. You can write them as concerns, और ये आपका controversy example बन जाएगा. अगर कोई डायरेक्ट कंट्रोवर्सी के बारे में पूछता है, वो तो है ही, तो उसमें आप ऑब्जेक्टिव लिख सकते हो, रीजन लिख सकते हो, फिर आउटकम लिख सकते हो उसका. दिस इज वेयर इट विल बी दिस पर्टिकुलर टॉपिक और द बर्निंग इशू के बाकी आर्टिकल जो है विल बी अ गेम चेंजर. यू हैव 3 or 4 पेजेस एंड यू हैव अ कंप्लीट इन डेप्थ एनालिसिस ऑन दैट. So just go forth and look into this particular article. We will take up one more new piece very soon. Thank you.